Hey, Rebels. Welcome to the Rebellion. Welcome to Redacted on this Wednesday. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natalie Morris.
And on this show, we cover the stories the mainstream media largely ignores. The NATO fallout, what will happen with our new moves in the Middle East. We're supposed to believe, listening to the defense secretary, listening to the president of the United States and the secretary of state, that Iran's nuclear program has been destroyed, that all of those strikes on those nuclear facilities, if you question them, then you are unpatriotic, you are fake news. So
well, I believe the thing that never existed was destroyed. Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely true. Okay, but we're going to get an expert on this. Colonel Macgregor is going to join us. We're also going to talk about this NATO war theater because NATO countries are saying, absolutely, we are going to spend all our money preparing for a war with Russia. Gilbert Doctoro is going to join us. He says this is, again, more theater. Is it entertained? Are you not entertained? Clayton, are you not entertained?
Jim Ferguson's going to be joining us from the UK. He had an exclusive report just about 24 hours ago or so speaking to an intelligence source on the idea that there would be a staged false flag nuclear attack or some sort of a false flag attack in Europe in order to drag Europe to war against Russia. This is all happening, of course, with the backdrop of the NATO summit right now. So we're going to speak to Jim Ferguson about that. And RFK Jr. going to war over big pharma ads and getting them off of television. It's actually remarkable. Like, will these television stations like CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, will they collapse once these big pharma advertisements are pulled off the air?
Or will we get real journalism on pharmaceuticals? Like, oh, here's a new vaccine. Maybe we should ask some questions now that they no longer pay our payroll. Interesting question. We're going to get to all of that in a second. Please tell us where you're joining us from. Let us know how you're doing today. How's your summer going? All of that stuff. But first, we have this for you before we get to the news.
If you've been seriously injured, your case could be worth millions, and you should know exactly what your rights are. That's why I want to tell you about Morgan & Morgan. They're America's largest injury law firm with over 1,000 attorneys working in all 50 states. And unlike a lot of firms that settle quickly, Morgan & Morgan doesn't take lowball offers from insurance companies. Just in the past few months, they won $12 million in Florida when the insurance company offered only $350,000. And in New York, they secured $6.8 million on a case where the offer was just $275,000. And the best part? It's absolutely free unless you win. Insurance companies try to pay out as little as possible. Morgan & Morgan fights to get you more if you become their client. It only takes a few minutes to see if you have a case, and you can do it right from your phone. It's that easy. You can visit forthepeople.com/redacted, or you can click the link in the description to get started.
Do it. All right. Well, President Trump says that strikes on Iran were devastating and they're done. Israel has agreed to this assessment. Whether it is or isn't destroyed, what we hope this means is that the U.S. is done there. No do-overs, no backsies. This is the first time in my life that I do not want to question a government narrative. I want this to be done. I don't want to go back at all. Here's the president confirming this just today.
A statement came in from the Atomic Energy Commission of Israel, and I just wondered, this is an official letter, and they're very serious people, as you know. The devastating U.S. strike on Fordo destroyed the site's critical infrastructure and rendered the enrichment facility totally inoperable. It was devastated. We assess that the American strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities has set back Iran's ability to develop nuclear weapons for many years to come. This achievement can continue indefinitely if Iran does not get access to nuclear material, which it won't. It's so sad that whole thing had to go.
All right. Well, the administration is having to defend the destruction after the Washington Post reported that these sites were not destroyed and that leaked intelligence reports said as much. And the president is saying those reports were incomplete. They were premature. It wasn't ready for submission. It was a rough draft, so to speak. And you know what? I'm willing to participate in this Because as an anti-war channel, we absolutely do not think that the United States needs to do another go-round. Like I said before, no do-overs, no backsies. Well, retired Colonel Douglas Macgregor is going to join us so he can tell us what he actually thinks of this intelligence. So, Colonel, thank you for joining us. Given that no one was killed in the initial strike or the retaliation, do you think we should leave it there? Can
Wink,
you see me
wink.
winking at you right now?
Listening to audio, we're winking. We're
Right.
just going to go along with this deception.
What do you think?
Well, let me tell you, I'm afraid to challenge Natalie. She's pretty ferocious about it. So,
Smart move, Colonel.
yeah, I was going to say, you would know more about it than I do. Now, listen, more and more interesting things are coming out. You pointed to the Washington Post. There's also additional information from various sources that President Putin appears to have played a role in persuading the Iranians to go along with this. Beyond that, I don't know too much. But the bottom line is whatever we hit was not significant, and we didn't seem to have made much difference to that entire program. The real question at this stage is, what about this ceasefire? What's its purpose? What's the basis for it? Is there some plan to go forward and craft some sort of compromise? I mean, what's the expectation? Because we also know that Israel is running out of cash and missiles. Their economy is about to implode, and they've run out of missiles. By the way, we're having problems with our own missile inventories in the Navy. We shot large numbers of missiles in support of Israel's defense. Those destroyers have to go back to port and reload. And then Raytheon reported earlier today that they have a problem with rocket motors, that while we build some components, we're dependent on foreign sources for the critical components in our rocket motors. We produce, if it's a good day, 660 missiles a year. This is the Patriot THAAD missile complex. That's going to be gone in a few days, frankly, in any modern war. So I don't know what's going on. It looks to me like there are a lot of considerations here. What does it really mean? I don't know. But I think President Trump took a long walk out on a very slender limb when he told everybody that the war was over, that he is the master of the universe and he solved this problem and brought peace. Good luck with that. I hope so, but like Natalie, but I don't think so.
Well, I mean, if the deception is there was never a nuclear program to begin with, but then we're led to believe that it was just destroyed. So we know it wasn't there, but it was just destroyed. Is Israel going to go along with this quote unquote deception? I mean, after all, they wanted regime change. So is Israel just going to sort of sit back and say, oh, good, hey, great. I'm glad this part of our chapter in our history is done now.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought up regime change, because I think that's the least likely outcome at this point. There's a lot of evidence to suggest the country is pulled together more now than ever in its more recent 30, 40, 50-year history. Of course, there was an expectation, because you have Azeri Turks and Arabs and Balukis and Kurds, different ethnic groups living within the country, that they could be stirred up to revolt against the central authority in Tehran. That hasn't worked very well. Don't see much evidence that that will happen. Haven't seen any American or Israeli flags on the streets of Tehran and people gathering by the hundreds of thousands demanding regime change. I think it's very clear that Israel needs a break. I'm sure that the Iranians will welcome this, and they're going to get more technical expertise, support from Russia than they've ever gotten before, along with more support and supplies from China. But I think the Israelis in particular right now need help and support to deal with the economy. And frankly, they've run very, very low on missiles. So I don't know what happens in the future. I don't know if this lasts 2 days, 2 weeks, or 2 months, but I don't think it's over, because fundamentally, the cause of everything is Gaza. And Gaza continues. And I'm sure you've seen this new report that was published in the Cradle that's Harvard linked, and it talks about 400,000 dead in Gaza. How many of those women and children is anybody's guess. But as long as this continues, nothing will end, because virtually everyone in the region has concluded that they can't coexist with Israel, because Israel refuses to coexist with them.
Yeah, the number
current leadership of Israel, let's be clear that there are plenty of Israelis that do want to coexist in the Middle East.
Really?
They just don't have any power.
Really? You
Well,
think
I don't
so?
know if plenty. I don't think I can quantify that. We do see peace movements inside of Israel, but we don't know. We know that the Netanyahu government was on the verge of ending before the war began. So, what is your assessment that Israelis do want to continue this war?
I think Mr. Netanyahu's policies have a lot of support. And I don't know if that's 70 or 80%. I know that there are Israelis who are no less horrified by all of this than you and I are, but they're a pretty small minority. I think the vast majority still support the policies, but I think overwhelmingly nobody likes the man. That I think you can bet on. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he doesn't have support for what he's trying to do. Hate
Right.
is a very powerful weapon. There's a lot of hatred in Israel for the people that live around it, and particularly the Arabs that live in it. And I think that's the biggest issue. And I just don't see how you get anywhere in the region until you deal with that. You've got to put an end to this mass murder and expulsion in Gaza.
I know people who've actually worked for Netanyahu, and they specifically have called him, corrupt. That he's an absolutely corrupt politician. But they absolutely support this position. So they can, on the one hand, I guess, look past the corruption and support this destruction in Gaza. Colonel, the NATO summit happening right now. President Trump gets off the plane, puts on a USA hat, is having meetings with people coming to him. What is your assessment of the future of NATO and the U.S. policy towards NATO, funneling money in that direction, getting these countries to come to the table? But there's a lot of talk about, hey, at this NATO summit that Russia is about to attack Europe.
Well, the good news is that Russia is absolutely not about to attack Europe. It has no interest in doing that. I think Trump is right when he says in talking to President Putin that it's very clear that President Putin wants to end this war. Of course, President Putin wanted to end this whole thing 3 weeks into February. That's why they met with the Ukrainians in April of 2022 and crafted a compromise, a solution that would have been wonderful for Ukraine and ended this tragedy. Unfortunately, that failed miserably. We all know why. The last administration, with its friends in NATO, did everything they could to stop it. I don't think there is a future for NATO, to be perfectly frank. I think NATO is on its last legs. As far as this 5% increase, I wouldn't hold my breath. The Spaniards, the Slovaks, and others have said, are you kidding? We're not spending that kind of money. Who's driving this? Primarily France, Great Britain, and Germany. But there are other issues here. The Germans and the Italians have both come to us and said, by the way, we'd like to have our $145 billion worth of gold that you supposedly have in your vaults under New York City. Can we have that back? And thus far, the response is a deafening silence. I think there's a lot more going on under the surface, and I can tell you that President Trump arriving with his hat that says USA on it is cute, but not particularly impressive in Europe.
Now, the president said that about Iran and Israel yesterday. They don't know what the F they're doing because he knows that it's so volatile. And then on aboard Air Force One, he said, look, Iran can have a beautiful future. We want the best for them. And he started saying effusive things for Iran, which was not what he had said in his speech at Riyadh. He was very threatening in that manner. So it's hard for us to follow the diplomacy or the diplomacy theater. And, why is he behaving like this? Has he somehow signaled to Israel, we're no longer bullying them on your behalf? Or do you think that we're just reading the tea leaves and that's a fool's errand?
I think we just have to stand back and wait and see, because frankly, he's being kind of incoherent. I mean, that's why I asked the question about what's the strategy. I'm always looking for the purpose that lies behind what people do. I haven't really figured it out. Now, one thing I can say with absolute certainty, and I like President Trump because of this, I know he doesn't want a war. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The question is he in a position to avoid it? Is he not necessarily so put upon by his, donors and the Congress, all of whom are collectively committed to the destruction of Iran and the establishment of a new order in the Middle East dominated by Israel? I don't know. And then again, you got to go back to this plan to dismember and destroy Iran. sounds an awful lot like the plan to dismember and destroy Russia. You know, Zelensky was the battering ram with his endless numbers of Ukrainians to be sacrificed on the battlefield to destroy Russia. We were going to expel Russia from the world. We were going to dethrone Putin and then ultimately put in a new government. We were going to strip Russia of her resources, divide her into peace parts, and pass it out. She would become a vassal state in the developing world. What do you hear now about behind the scenes about Iran? Essentially the same thing. We want the oil resources, the natural gas. We were going to break it up. You just pull up the Iran map and look at where all these various minorities are located or ethnic groups. Same kind of mentality. And then we're going to put somebody in that's going to be a good puppet and do what we in Israel tell them to do. That has failed. I think President Trump understands that. But does that mean the plan is dead? Does that mean the war is over? There will be no more fighting? No, I don't think so. And I don't know what would start it. I don't think the Iranians, per se, will be the first to fire another shot. If there's more fighting to be done, I think the Israelis will decide that. But I don't see any evidence that we're not going to support them and that we're not going to stand by them. I think we absolutely will. So I'm not sure what President Trump means this time. But, you know, it's pretty tough to turn to people and say, look, we're really your friends. This is a friendly bombing exercise. Don't
right.
Understand that we're here with love and kisses. I don't think so.
Yeah, it does feel like theater. I think that is the perfect assessment. It's like we have to sit back because there's a bit of schizophrenia happening right now, and trying to map all of this out is very, very difficult. Who knows from 1 minute to the next, with a Truth Social post to a bombing campaign next, and then we're back to being friends again, and we want to make Iran great again. MIGA.
We'll all follow Natalie. We'll all follow Natalie's lead here and hope for the best.
Yeah, well, that's always wise. I think it's a wise lesson. Go ahead, Philip.
Can I ask a quick question? But something about the, like, I hate to get in Natalie's way on this, but like the ruse doesn't make any sense, because if they're saying that Iran's nuclear material is now gone, they no longer have it. But if we know they have it and we're pretending like they don't, can they just go on enriching uranium without any IAEA oversight? Can they just do what they want now? Because what are we going to do? Say, well, Iran is now working towards nuclear weapons with what? If it's destroyed, what do they have?
Right.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm not sure we know. And if we do know, we're not telling anybody. Secondly, what's the big lesson that you learn if you're sitting in Tehran from all of this, or Riyadh, or Karachi, or Islamabad, or Cairo, or anywhere else? If you don't have a nuclear weapon, then the United States and its friends in Israel can come for you at any point in time they like. The lesson is you better get a nuclear weapon. That's the bad news. Now, the good news is the Iranians have said they will not leave the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty. That's a very good thing. The problem is that treaty has no impact whatsoever on Israel, and Israel's not giving up anything. And we seem to want to make sure that Israel has a permanent monopoly on the nuclear weapon so that they can bomb, intimidate, threaten their neighbors at will, right? Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't be surprised at anything that happens from this point forward. But I think the notion that somehow or another everybody says, okay, that's fine, it's over now, we promise we won't do anything. I think we're going to see more nuclear weapons in more countries, unfortunately. That's the principal outcome.
Right. It's a chain reaction, but we have to remember that the first one in the region was Israel. But Philip makes a good point, because now why would the IAEA even ever go to Iran, even though Iran has been working alongside the IAEA? We had Rafael Grossi say, we've inspected every gram. We know what they're up to. Even last year saying we found some at 60%. That wasn't so good. And Iran said, oops. But at least we had some kind of record. But now why would they even go there? Like, oh, the U.S. blew it up. See you never. That doesn't make sense either, right?
Well, the bad news is we've also discovered that Grossi and the IAEA were reporting pretty faithfully to the Israelis.
Yeah.
No, they're
right.
comparable.
That was missed just before the Israelis starting their bombing campaign. In fact, that may even be why the Israelis started their bombing campaign, is because Iran leaked these documents. This was front page news in the East and a blip in the West.
Yes. Well, that's your mainstream media. We've been down that road before. We understand. I think we just have to keep in mind that whether we like it or not, Israel and the lobby have an enormous amount of influence and control over the White House and the Hill. So how can we be certain of anything, regardless of what the president says? And by the way, I'm the first to stand up and say, I think President Trump's intentions are good. Unfortunately, intentions don't count for much in the environment where he's operating. You have to be a ruthless SOB in order to make your impact. And I've never seen him behave that way. I think he's too nice, to be frank.
Colonel Douglas Macgregor, thank you so much for your assessment, as always. We appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks, Colonel.
Hey, thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Colonel.
All right, coming up, we're going to talk about the war theater that is the NATO summit. Now, President Trump is saying, I did it. I got EU countries to bring up their contribution. They're going to pay now. But, you know, I think we need to see some receipts before we victory lap that one.
Yeah.
Because stop me if you think you've heard this one before. We're also going to talk about Europe preparing for war, whether or not there's a false flag attack coming. We're going to have Jim Ferguson talk to us. But before we do that, we want to let you know that Redacted is brought to you by Crowd Health. And we are so excited to have them aboard because we are actually Crowd Health members. Crowd Health is an alternative to health insurance. It's not an insurance plan. It's a crowd fund. And what you do is you join this crowd fund for a very small monthly fee. It's less than a tenth of what you would pay for your monthly insurance. And then when you go to the doctor, you pay cash prices, which are usually about a third to 2/3 less than what you would normally pay. And then you crowdfund those events. You save thousands on your medical insurance. You also are participating in a disruptor, in an industry disruptor, because when you go to the doctor and you pay a cash price, they cannot inflate those prices for insurance company. If we all did this, we could have closer to universal health care than anything else that we are possibly going to get. So check them out and see if you would like to be a disruptor too. Now, I will tell you, we have had emergencies that we have had to crowdfund through Crowd Health, and it was easy and simple. And these were stressful events. Your kid is sick. You go to the emergency event, a room, and you're like, oh my gosh, should I have done this? Is this going to work? And it works. So go to Crowd Health, join crowdhealth.com, and they will answer all the questions that you've got. And again, I can sing their praises all show, but that's not why you came here. So go to joincrowdhealth.com. Now, if you go and tell them that Redacted sent you, then you will get your first 3 months for just $99 per month. Now think about it. You're probably paying about $2,000 if you have a family per month. Wouldn't you like to pay $99 per month instead? So go there, get on the phone. They will answer all of your questions. Go to joincrowdhealth.com, use the code Redacted, and get $99 per month membership for your first 3 months. One more time, joincrowdhealth.com. The code is Redacted. If you want to ask me any questions, if you want to ask them questions, you can @reply me on X. I am a big fan, super proud to be a Crowd Health member. And we thank them so much for their support of Redacted. Well, NATO leaders are trying to play President Trump at the NATO summit with two narratives. Number one, Russia is coming any minute now. We are at imminent threat of a full ground war with Russia, is what they want us to believe. Also, they will pay, they say, to match U.S. contributions. They're no longer just going to rest on the lure of American tax dollars. Wink, wink. Only they are trying to fool the president with shady bookkeeping entries, but they are going to pretend. Here is NATO leader Mark Rutte today lecturing NATO members about paying more in front of President Trump, who nods approvingly. Watch.
For too long, one ally, the United States, carried too much of the burden of that commitment, and that changes today. President Trump, dear Donald, you made this change possible. Your leadership on this has already produced $1 trillion in extra spending from European allies since 2016. And the decisions today will produce trillions more for our common defense to make us stronger and fairer by equalizing spending between America and America's allies.
Okay, they sure got a telling to, didn't they? Our next guest, Gilbert Doctoro, is an academic and Russia-U.S. expert. He says this is pure theater because even if member states pretend to hit this 5% of GDP contribution. Most of them can't afford it. And even if they could, it would make Europe less secure, not more. So thank you for joining us. Why don't you explain to us how this is theater and what the president means by victory lapping it? Does he know that it's theater?
Well, I think he's behind it. He is creating for himself an off-ramp. When he goes back to the States, he can claim that Europeans are picking up much more of the expense of defense of Europe than America can pay less. So without leaving NATO, he has prepared a downsizing of American participation thanks to the upsizing of all of the Europeans that they just signed on to today. Now,
so does this mean the U.S. is getting a discount then? Because won't the budget remain the same?
He as much as said that if they are increasing their contribution, then the Americans obviously are reducing their contribution. So that is the end result, similar to the political theater that we saw in its solution to the Israeli-Iran conflict, where effectively Trump was providing Netanyahu with an exit ramp. So this is the second similar handling of allies and friends that we see within a week. And I think should be interpreted that way. But let's take a step back. This is to be introduced over a 10-year period, which is to say, by definition, it will never be introduced. In 10 years in politics is an eternity. Not a single person there in that room today will be in power in 10 years. In the meantime, they all can kick the can down the road. So, but that is a generalization. I'd like to introduce some specifics into this conversation, which come out of my deeper knowledge of what goes on here in Belgium, the little country where I live, that happens to be the home to the NATO headquarters. It's a country which has one of the lowest contributions in Europe when looking at its budget, military budget, as a percentage of GDP. It's only 1.3% here. There's been a lot of discussion in the Belgian newspapers about how the Prime Minister, Mr. Bart de Wever, is promising to raise that to 2% before the end of the year. But it's all by chicanery. It's all by financial manipulations. It's by things like just relabeling various road improvements and bridge improvements that otherwise are part of the budget and calling them defense spending because they're easing the way of Yankees who may arrive by plane or boat on these shores as they head off to fight the monster in the East whenever the war starts. This is nonsense, and it's openly admitted. This is not my way, my judgment. It's the judgment of serious pro-Atlanticist journalists in an Atlanticist publication, like most of the European print media. So the idea of going from this 2% up to 3.5%, which is the real number, that's underneath the headline number of 5%, because the last 1.5% is indeed infrastructure spending, not real military spending. So to get from the 2%, which they can't make now, to 3.5% is frankly politically impossible. Again, not my judgment. This is a discussion of people who know a lot better than I do how the politics of budgeting works in Belgium. The simple statement is that there's no room for raising taxes. The taxes on the employees, on working people, are the highest in the world here in Belgium. Low taxes on capital, on real estate, so forth, but very high taxes on working people. You can't raise that. There'll be a rebellion. The government will fall. Indeed, in anticipation of any formal move to raise the military budget, there is a serious threat that the Liberals, who are part of the coalition, will leave the government and it will fall. It took 9 months to put together the existing Belgian government for after the June 2024 federal elections. 9 months. If this government falls, it'll take at least as much time to put together a replacement. And the caretaker government, during that time, cannot touch the budget, cannot introduce new legislation, meaning nothing will happen to meet the new higher spending requirements. Now, Belgium is not very dissimilar from the neighbors, even Germany, which has much better financing, much better credit access, easier to borrow, to pay for larger investments in its military industry and in paying for recruitments. Even there, they may find the money for the tanks, but they can't find enough money to buy off young men to go into the army. The volunteers, I think in the last couple of months, they got 500 young Germans decided to enter and sign contracts to serve. But Mr. Pistorius is dismayed, and he is talking about, Pistorius is the defense minister. He comes from Schulz's party of socialists, but he more or less stands alone when he says, in his capacity as defense minister, that if the volunteers aren't there, then he will introduce the law for a draft to forcibly raise the number of soldiers in the German army. That will
but
bring
all
down
of this, sir, if I just may interrupt, is predicated on a war with Russia, which they are hysterical about. And when we lived in Europe and this conflict broke out, the people of Europe bought it. They were like, oh, yes, Russia, they must be stopped before they get here. I don't think they buy that anymore, do they?
Elites, not the public.
Okay.
I am in a prestigious social club called Royo, because there are monarchists in it here in Belgium, and they're all successful professionals. And at table talk, I can draw conclusions. You even have some nice people at the table saying, "Oh, our sons and daughters should go into military service. It's good for their discipline and to their general education." Such nonsense appears at the table when they refuse to understand that entering the military service in a situation where you're preparing for a war with Russia is condemning your sons and daughters to an early death. Now, you are right, very correct in identifying the Russian boogeyman as something that is held up by the governments here for the reason of their own self-preservation. The only uniting feature in the EU, and the EU is almost entirely become synonymous with NATO, the only unifying feature is fear and hatred of Russia. You take that factor out, Europe falls to pieces. And so they are in this game for their own ambition to stay in power, not because they're improving the security. I'd like to get to that second point, that they'll be weakening security of Europe, not strengthening it, if they were to succeed in raising the expenditures on military purposes. Over the last 30, 40 years, there has been a shifting balance between Russia, or the Soviet Union originally, on the east, and Western Europe and NATO on the other side, the west, over emphasis in your defense planning on conventional weapons, conventional warfare, or on nuclear weapons. When you are the weaker side, you go for the equalizer. The equalizer is nuclear. When you're on the stronger side, you are a fan of conventional warfare and attrition warfare. In the end of the 1970s, early 1980s, before Russia collapsed, Russia even then understood that Europe, which had indeed a much stronger military establishment than today, 2-3 times more in the case of Germany, men, equipment, everything. It all was downscaled and left in dilapidated state after the Soviet Union collapsed. In any case, back in the 70s and early 80s, the Russians, or Soviets, looking at Western Europe and at NATO, saw a real monster. It had maybe 1 million men at arms. It had vast numbers of tanks and all the heavy equipment you would want for conventional warfare. And at that point, the Russians invested heavily in tactical nuclear weapons, the equalizer. Coming into this new millennium, the 25 years that Mr. Putin has been in power, the situation is the reverse. Western Europe's military has been reduced to negligible. Even Germany has close to nothing that works. The whole of Europe has no air defense. And Russia, in the meantime, as we see on the battlefield in Ukraine, has become the strongest military in Europe, if not in the world. Not because it has 4 million people under arms, as in Soviet times, but because it has very well-equipped, well-trained, and highly motivated men-at-arms, with the latest equipment, both strategic and tactical. Under these circumstances, Europe is quite scared, and has reason to be scared. But there are 2 ways you can go about it. You can try to protect yourself by building up your muscles, which is what Rutte and the NATO leadership and the EU leadership of von der Leyen are trying to do. Or you can go and talk to the Russians and revise the security architecture to bring them in from the cold and to remove the threat. But as I said, removing the threat also removes the hold-on power of all those people who are meeting today in The Hague and who are otherwise participants in the EU. So they are caught in their own personal ambitions, working against the interests of the countries that have elected them.
Well, you nailed it there. And the only thing that I might push back on is who will still be there in 10 years, because Ursula von der Leyen seems so slippery. She's like petrified wood in there that who knows when we'll ever be rid of her. But I want to let everybody know that they can read more of this brilliant analysis at Gilbert Doctoro's Substack. And we link to it regularly in the Redacted newsletter. He joins us for Russia, not from Russia, from Belgium, where it is late. So thank you, sir, for staying up and offering us this analysis as always.
Well, thanks for giving me this platform.
Absolutely. All right. Coming up, we're going to talk about whether Europe is planning for war with a false flag, because as Professor Doctoro just talked about, obviously the threat of war with Russia is not real. They are using it to sell you on a war in order to stay in power because they're demons. But what if? Right? False flags work, as Clayton likes to say. So we're going to talk to Jim Ferguson about that in a second. But before we do, we remind you that Redacted is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Hillsdale College is a great place to go for more than 40 free online courses. So if you are interested in constantly being a lifelong learner, like we are here at Redacted, this is a great place to go to get self-guided study. You can pick up a book, obviously, or you can join a study course in order to grow your learning with somebody else, with a professor. For instance, you can learn about the works of C.S. Lewis, read the stories in the book of Genesis, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution, the rise and fall of the Roman Republic. A new one that you might really be interested in that we'd like to point your attention to is Introduction to Aristotle's Ethics, How to Lead a Good Life. This is a great philosophy. If you're really interested in philosophy, again, who isn't, right? In this course, college president Larry P. Arnn leads you through the most important lessons of Aristotle's ethics. And it's, of course, self-paced. You can study whenever and wherever. So start your free course today. Head on over to hillsdale.edu/redacted. Sign up and start your free online course today. One more time.
Yeah, also they have a brand new Federalist course as well. So you can study Alexander Hamilton, you can go back to the Federalist Papers, and I think that was a new course that they just added as well. So you've got to check out that Federalist one. I just wanted to squeeze that in there because it's really, really interesting. So
yes, go peruse again. Make your free account at hillsdale.edu/redacted.
All right. Well, is Putin set to attack NATO countries? Or a nuclear false flag about to be released on European soil, according to intel sources. Are they on the brink of a nuclear false flag attack? Journalist and founder of Freedom Train International, Jim Ferguson, posted this shocking report. Breaking exclusive, Europe on the brink. Covert source warns of staged nuclear event to trigger World War III. He says, not long after I landed in Paris, I was contacted by an operative from a covert intelligence agency. They insisted on total anonymity, face concealed, voice altered, but their message was explosive. That there was a number of false flags that Zelensky knew about and war crimes that Zelensky knew about, and most alarmingly, that another Black Swan event is imminent, one so devastating that could push Europe and the rest of the world into war. Of course, they desperately want these false flags. They desperately want war with Russia. All you have to do is listen to Ursula von der Leyen. Listen to these clowns at the NATO summit right now. They desperately want war. Here is Zelensky telling us that he thinks Putin is going to take over all of Europe. Listen.
Putin only thinks about war. That's a fact. Maybe he connects his own political survival with his ability to keep killing. So long as he kills, he lives. And our intelligence confirmed this. Russia is even planning new military operations on NATO territory, meaning your countries, and this war is now on in Ukraine.
So there we go. Yeah, we're going to see a war inside of Europe on European territory. Jim Ferguson joins us from the UK right now, former parliamentary candidate and journalist, again, founder of Freedom Train International. Jim, I mean, what did you think when you heard this from this intelligence asset, this intelligence source, that you're going to see a false flag inside of Europe? What did you make of that?
Well, there was a number of things that came out in that conversation that I was very interested in learning about. First of all, they knew how the intelligence networks worked. So they were, from my opinion, they were certainly knowledgeable about how it all fits together. But what's very alarming about this is that about 15 months ago, 16 months ago maybe, there was a lot of chatter about the possibility of a dirty bomb being put off as, once again, another false flag. And a lot of us within social media were highlighting this, and thankfully that didn't happen. I don't know whether the activity that we did collectively around the world prevented it or called them out. They maybe got cold feet. But I think this intelligence operative is the real deal. They said they were part of an international covert intelligence agency. And the way they described it and the information that they gave would lead credence to that. And what they basically were saying is they referenced Bucha, which is an area just outside of Kiev. And they said that there was intelligence, there was video footage and camera footage and high-level testimonials that civilians were executed, hands tied behind their back, and their lives taken, along with bodies taken from a region known as Donbass in the east of Ukraine, and laid out to make it look like a Russian massacre. But this all happened 2 days after the Russians had withdrawn from that area, and there is satellite imagery that their analysts have gone through that seems to prove that. Now, I haven't seen this information, but they said that they definitely do have it, and that they've attempted to put this all through the Arrow meeting in New York just about 5 or 6 weeks ago, and that it was basically being rebutted. So the other alarming thing about all this, Clayton and Natalie, is that they said that MI6 were involved. They said other NATO intelligence agencies were involved. They even said, because I asked them, I said, would the CIA be aware of this? And they indicated that they certainly would be aware of it. So there seems to be a pattern of behavior that would indicate the prelude to something happening. And I asked them further details about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, Zelensky is a CIA puppet, right? So Zelensky is, I wouldn't be surprised at all that the CIA is actively involved. The CIA feeding him this information at the NATO summit where he says Putin is going to attack. So he's sort of like laying the groundwork for this, Jim. At least that's the way I read it. He's laying the groundwork, telling us that Putin is going to attack Europe. We just had Colonel Macgregor on who says there's zero evidence that Putin has any interest in Russia's big enough. Like, it's big enough to handle and to deal with on your own. You want to add more territory? It's insanity. But he's telling it, and he's a CIA puppet. So I feel like he's laying the groundwork for this, Jim.
Yeah, definitely. And not just him. I mean, other European leaders are ramping up the rhetoric. We've seen Keir Starmer now warning that the UK needs to be prepared in terms of a home defence because the Russians are about to invade. This is just utter craziness. And there is a push to war. I believe that there's going to be probably call-up papers, conscription issued for young British people to be drafted into the military. They're very serious about this. They are determined to pose Russia as a major threat. But if they do go down the route of provoking Russia to use tactical nuclear weapons, we are heading into World War III. I asked them the specifics, where's this likely to happen? And they said it could be a number of different scenarios or recipes, as they said. This was one of the other tells that they gave, that they did understand how the intelligence mechanisms work. They said there are a number of scenarios. It could be that an attack would be done on a Baltic fleet that might belong either to America or to a NATO ally, or even the assassination of a national leader from one of the NATO countries. So they seem to have very, very high-grade intelligence that this is what is being planned. And when you see Zelensky and Starmer and others like Ursula von der Leyen ramping up the rhetoric, it might suggest that such an event could be quite imminent.
I wonder if there are conflicting dark forces right now at work, because a false flag attack could be useful for a war with Russia, but now we've also got the possibility of a war with Iran. Do they care? And with, there are definitely people, in fact, we saw this online yesterday, hoping that Iran attacks the United States so that we are dragged into a full-scale war there. And so now I wonder if they're like, no, I wanted the war with Russia first. No, the war with Iran. And they don't care what civilians are killed as a result.
Well, that's exactly the case. And I asked the intelligence operative about why would somebody within MI6 do something that would be counterproductive to British national interests. It was very interesting that the answer they gave, because they said, look, there are two stratas. That was their words. There was two stratas of people on the planet right now. You've got ordinary people like us who just want to live our lives in peace. We don't want to see war, whether it's in the Middle East or anywhere else. And then there are those that consider themselves to be the elites. Those people who have got no conscience. They are quite capable of doing anything for the sake of power and war and profit. And unfortunately, what they described was that those in the intelligence services are really doing the bidding of these elites. They're no longer loyal to the people of our respective countries, whether it's in America, whether it's in the UK or Europe. But they seem to be pushing for this war. Why? Well, maybe they just want to get order out of chaos. They maybe want to cause massive destabilization to usher in new financial structures, new financial systems. We've seen the advent of CBDCs in October that Ursula von der Leyen has been talking about, Madame Lagarde of the IMF and others. So this could be their way, their mechanism to cause such instability and panic and fear. And we've seen what they did during the COVID pandemic. Fear was their go-to weapon to control the narrative. And unfortunately, the lying mainstream media are going right along with it. They're ramping up that rhetoric. I won't be surprised to see in the national newspapers in the UK tomorrow about all the threats of the Russians coming in and invading the UK. They're just lapping it all up. And unfortunately, I think that this is what's going to be going forward in terms of policy, in terms of what they're going to do next. But I think the people themselves don't want to see it. People in Europe don't want war. The ordinary people in Ukraine don't want war. And this operative seemed to be, because I always wonder about who, what is their motivation? Are they actually a Russian asset? I didn't get that feeling that they were. I think they care deeply about the Ukrainian people. I don't think they want to see war happening. And the reason they came to me, they may have gone to others, I don't know. But they wanted that message put out. And thankfully, the post that I put out has got a lot of attention. So thanks to you guys, maybe it will get further attention and perhaps put their plans off, because nobody wants to see this happen.
That's my hope, is that we report on these false flag attempts, because false flags really, really work. They work deeply. Go back to Operation Ajax in Iran, planting false stories in the press, the overthrow, fake staged protests. Like, false flags really, really work, and they work well. I mean, look at 9/11, for crying out loud. We gave up our freedoms. We went into $6 trillion in war, killing millions of people, thanks to what happened on 9/11. So these false flag attacks work. I mean, go back, for crying out loud, to Pearl Harbor. The list is pretty endless. Jim, we'll get you out of here on this. Do you feel like there's a sense in the UK that they are on a war footing, like they are preparing for some sort of a move towards Russia?
Well, I've been traveling extensively across Europe, from Romania to Budapest, Hungary. I've been in Ireland, I've been in the Netherlands, I've been in Paris, France latterly. And there is a general feeling within the patriotic groups, those people who are like us, don't want to see war, that there is a ramping up of the rhetoric within those who are within the globalist order, shall we say. And there is definitely a push for war coming of that, I have no doubt. I think while we've been distracted in the Middle East, I think this has been building up quietly. And a lot of those national leaders haven't posted anything for the last 5 or 6 or 7 days, some of them, about Ukraine. Now they're talking about it and they're coming out, and the rhetoric is Russia's bad, we've got to prepare for war. I think there could be something in the pipeline for this, and I hope that they don't. But let's hope that we can get that information out and call them out in it, because I think the consequences of it would be World War III, no doubt about it.
Jim Ferguson, follow him on X. He does an incredible job tracking all of this garbage and making sure that we are informed. Jim Ferguson, UK on X. Jim, great to see you as always. Thanks for staying up late for us there in the UK to be able to talk to us. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Thanks, Jim.
I always wonder what that job is like. Well, I got to go sell another war today. You know, you're Mark Rutte, you're Ursula von der Leyen.
It's very profitable.
We have to go, cry that what is Chicken Little, like...
Yeah, well, it's the same thing with Big
We have to
Pharma.
do it. Here I go, going back around. Yeah. Doesn't that get exhausting, or do you think they actually believe it?
No, they love it. I mean, look at Lindsey Graham, for crying out loud. Look at that scumbag. These people who fuel, they're like demons. They don't have a family. They don't have children. They don't worry about any of that kind of stuff. And so they just hang out in their little DC social circle. They are funded largely by the military-industrial complex.
Which,
they
by
take
the
a lot
way,
of money.
we didn't talk about this on the show, but I just watched you on Tucker Carlson yesterday.
Yeah.
Your face when he says Lindsey Graham's a delightful person, you were like, that's interesting.
I mean, off camera, I've interviewed Lindsey Graham a number of times. I mean, off camera, he's pleasant enough. I will say, and I've said this before, Lindsey Graham has really bad halitosis. Like, he could literally sear the skin off a dead cat. Like, I mean, it's that bad. He could literally kill you. Just standing near Lindsey Graham is painful.
Well, that's a very personal attack I wasn't anticipating.
I'm just telling you. Just telling you.
I mean, you don't know.
I feel like a
interviewed
Death
him
Eater.
in New York, and he came from a bagel shop. That might be slightly unfair. I will give him
No, I know the difference between an everything bagel.
Okay, with onions.
Yeah, I know the difference between an everything bagel and halitosis. I will say
Okay.
that.
I mean, I didn't mean to get personal like that, but okay. We'll talk about this more off the show. Sorry.
Global Forever says that's nasty as that.
I didn't know you were going
there. That is
there.
very personal. I'm just telling you. Anyway.
I mean, if that's what we're doing, Clayton keeps his car very dirty.
That's horse shit.
Yes, you do.
You want to go see my car right now? That's because the rest of the family uses it and leaves their crap in my car.
No, Clayton.
All right, enough.
My car is split down the middle. There's my side of the car, which is clean, and there's my daughter's side of the car, which has got stuff all over it.
Bingo. That's exactly the case. Yes, that's my car. They leave their crap in my car, and then I find it.
That's
what is
not
this?
true.
What is this old LaCroix can doing in here?
Nope, it's your drink containers. Okay, fine.
All right. Hey, coming up on the show, RFK Jr. is going to war over those drug ads that you see on the television. Do you remember a few years ago when that whole royal family, that Oprah had that royal family episode where she interviewed one of the princes?
Oh, yes.
And so all of these Brits watched CBS television for the first time. They never watch American television. And they were stunned. All of these Brits went to social media and they were like, wait a minute. Every ad on their television is for drugs. They couldn't believe it. They're like, what is this? We don't have that here. Anyway, RFK Jr. is going to war right now, trying to crack down on these drug ads. We're going to talk about that with our friend Kim Bright is going to be joining us here in moments. She's been fighting She's been fighting for Maha before it was even popular. Kim is going to join us in moments on that. I know she's passionate about that. But first, speaking of bagels, we got to tell you about our friends over at Royo. Look at those. That's an everything bagel right there on your screen, and these are delicious. If you've tried store-bought healthy breads, bagels, you know they're made from recycled cardboard. Remember the old school food pyramid? Carbs were the hero. Don't eat any meat. Just eat carbs. These days, it's all about protein, and bread's been put on the naughty list, of course. So when the artisan bakers at Royo sent me their variety box, we got their huge variety box of everything bagels, plain bagels, regular bread. I fully expected, okay, this is going to be dry, boring, basically tastes like cardboard. I was wrong. These things taste amazing. Here's the best part. Everything is baked fresh daily. Super clean, minimal ingredients, low in carbs, high in fiber. You can read the packaging yourself. Some of these products have 2 net carbs, so it keeps you looking summer ready. It keeps my bikini body looking great. Royo breads are so good, you'll forget they're even healthier. And I got you 20% off. Go to eatroyo.com and use that code REDACTED to get 20% off. That promo code REDACTED at eatroyo, that's ROYO.com. All right. Well, RFK Jr. admitted on camera the real reason that these drug companies buy so much airtime on the major networks. And he is going to war right now, wanting to crack down on all of these drug ads that could cripple some of these broadcasters. But here he lays out on camera the real reason these drug companies buy so much airtime on the major networks. Watch.
The press now gets, the mainstream television networks. And Roger Ailes told me one time that 75% of his advertising revenues on the evening news divisions were pharmaceutical ads.
I believe that just by observation, just as a consumer.
I mean, you can watch it. You can watch brought to you by Pfizer.
If you eliminate big food and pharma from I mean, just, if you watch the Super Bowl.
Yeah. So
it would have been Super Bowl ads.
Those companies are doing that partially because the evening news is very attractive to drug companies because young people don't watch news. It's all older people, and those are their customers. They're people who are taking all this whole, arsenal, this battery of drugs, but they also do it to control content.
Ah, there it is. To control the content, to control the narrative. So there's no dissenting voices on any of this. And Kim Bright has been battling Big Pharma for 50 years. She knows their game plan better than anyone. She was Maha before Maha even existed. Our audience loves Kim because she has no filter. She has a strong bullshit meter. And Kim joins us now. Kim, I mean, so we really know the playbook here. It's to control the content. It's to control the dissenting voices on these networks, isn't it?
Yes. And, they used to market directly before 1981, directly to the doctors. But starting in 1981, Big Pharma started marketing through the written ads. And then 1983 came along, started going on television ads. And Clayton, I did some research and I found out back in 1995, they were spending $360 million. By 2006, they were spending $5 billion. And by 2024, almost $14 billion. So we know that we've been inundated and brainwashed with this amount of money going in there. And again, you just turn on the TV, you see what's going on. Every other ad is brainwashing to think that, there's nothing else to do out there to take care of our bodies except take drugs. And then we will be happy and romping through the daisies and singing these wonderful songs. But look at all the side effects at the end of the commercial. Yeah, bunch of crap.
It is a bunch of crap. Last week, I did a segment about the new FDA-approved HIV vaccine, which you're supposed to take twice a year. And we played a clip of the news anchors breathlessly excited about it without telling the truth about it. For instance, that people on these PrEP meds get different STDs at a greater rate. And also it's made to keep women in Africa from getting AIDS because they get sexually assaulted left and right. They didn't seem to, they did no research. It was just, isn't this great new vaccine? So that's not journalism. Do you think that if they were not backed by these companies, they might actually have a little curiosity as a journalist?
I would think so, Natalie. I would definitely think so. Yeah, I would hope so. But, Axios did a survey at the end of, I think it was last year, and they found out that 60% of Americans don't want pharmaceutical ads, big pharma ads on TV. 60%. Again, okay, we're majority. And then in 2025, there was another survey done that showed that 93% of Americans back MAHA's basic principles. I mean, 93% of them want to know if their politician or their bureaucrat has any ties whatsoever to big pharma or to the big food companies out there. So, I mean, it's very apparent to everybody except the ones that want to keep the status quo that Americans want the truth. Americans don't want the big pharma constantly inundating them with this crap.
Well, then there's a story in the Washington Post where they plan to the Washington Post reports plan to vaccinate all Americans despite what RFK Jr. wants to do. So I guess basically the headline here is, according to the Washington Post, vaccine makers, pharmacists, professional medical societies, and others opposed to recent changes in the vaccine policy are getting together, Kim, and they're going to create their own system for now recommending and purchasing vaccines, basically in a move to that will bypass what RFK Jr. is trying to do, according to the Washington Post. Does this surprise you at all? So basically going around whatever HHS is doing?
No, because these people, the rats had to run somewhere, and they're being very Machiavellian, aren't they? I mean, they're grouping together. I don't know if you know this, Clayton, but they're being funded by the heiress for the Walmart, billions, Christy Walton, and there's some new initiative at the University of Minnesota that is called VIP, and it stands for Vaccine Integrity Project. And guess who the co-chairs are on that? They're all involved with this group, and they're advising them and everything. We have the former commissioner for the FDA, her name Margaret Homburg, and she was there for both terms with Obama. She's the co-chair, and of course, she was very excited to rush through drugs and new foodstuffs that contained all these chemicals. And so she's their co-chair. And then the other co-chair is Dr. Harvey Feinberg. He's a former president of the Institute of Medicine. And then they've even got a member of the COVID advisory board under Biden who's saying, oh, nothing to look at here. Don't worry. We're not trying to be shadow to the ACIP. We're not trying to run parallel to them. Oh, we're not trying to be the authority. But yes, indeed, they are. And did you see all the different association groups that are with these people? I mean, let me just read through them real quick. American Academy of Pediatrics, American Academy of Family Physicians, American College of Physicians, American Pharmacists Association, and they take millions in grants from the different, from Pfizer, from Merck, from all these guys. NFID, National Foundation for Infectious Diseases, American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, they're key group advisory on this board, and they endorse products that they don't even do any research on. And they also took $11 million from the CDC during COVID to push these COVID shots on pregnant women, okay? And we know that under RFK now, they are, the CDC has changed its guidance to not even recommending COVID shots for pregnant women, whereas before they're recommending no guidance, whereas before they were pushing them on pregnant women with really not good effects.
Now, RFK Jr. has said going forward that he will not push any more vaccines without full clinical trials. But we know that the vaccine industry can still sort of manipulate their trials, even if it's against a placebo, by only reporting certain things. We saw that with the COVID vaccine, is that they never actually tested transmission. They only tested symptoms. So if you coughed or sneezed, then, they counted it, that they never came back and tested. So how can we trust this? We have to just literally have people like you and I read the clinical trials and interpret them because they're different across the board. So how do you feel about that?
We all have to step up to the plate and start taking more responsibility for our health. We have to look at things. We can't trust. Now, I trust a whole lot more with who's in power now with Trump and his whole team, including RFK Jr. they're trying to show us the truth. I mean, this whole thing about the old ways, it's got to go, and it's got to stay gone, because they were liars all the way down. They're all about the power and the money. And once you realize that, how in the world can you believe these people? How in the world are you going to use these people as the leaders to tell you what's good and not good for your body? You've got to wake up. You've got to understand that you're the person that's got to take some interest in your own body, and you have to start looking into things. And there's just so much data out there now. I know it gets very confusing, but you've got to find some trusted sources, and then you've got to start applying it and see, well, does this work for me? I mean, God didn't bring down and give us all these, drugs. He brought us down real food. He brought, we existed without these things long before, and I think in a much healthier state.
Yeah. Right. Well, you've been battling this for years. I mean, and now I think we finally turned a corner where, like, natural remedies. I mean, you built your whole company on trying to help people, like, educate people about gut bacteria and all of that. Do you feel like first of all, how important is that? And do you feel like we've turned a corner?
I do, with everybody that's in place now, but it doesn't mean that the rats have gone away. They've just, gone underneath dark corners and in caves. They'll be back. We have to be vigilant. And, I've been doing this for almost 50 years. And when I started, people were laughing at me, and doctors were telling no, don't listen to her. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Food's got nothing to do with your disease or your condition that is, not doing well. I mean, crazy stuff like this, because I was using what's called alternative methodologies, right? I was actually teaching people what food did for their body and keeping them, from being on these drugs. So I have been fighting for a long time, but I am so encouraged. I mean, we can actually talk about it now. Back when I first started, I couldn't even talk about this. I had to be very, very careful when I'd go on radio shows and everything, how to say things in a way where, the FTC didn't come down on me, or, it's been a journey, let me tell you. And now it's so much easier. And I'm just so glad that we've got the support of President Trump and his whole team now to try and expose us to the truth. But we've got to be smart, we've got to be vigilant, and we've got to research ourselves and depend on ourselves.
Well, before I get you out of here, Kim, I know you guys have what you guys have done at Brightcore is fantastic. I'm a huge fan of your kimchi in a capsule. I take it every day. I've now started forcing my wife to take it. She's been taking it every day. She can attest to that. Forcing her.
I've been forcing her down and forcing her.
Yes. Well, I've been telling her, I've been saying, I've been talking to Kim about this and how important it is for our gut health. And we've got to make sure that this is part of our supplement process every day. So before I let you go, can you just tell our audience about this? If you don't want
kimchi,
to, that's okay. But I want to tell you, I'll give you the floor.
Okay, thank you. Again, our gut is so important. Why? 70 to 80% of our immune system's in our gut. And when the onslaught comes from the skies, from the chemtrails, from all the things that we're, having in our body every day, from the water, from the food that's loaded with chemicals, it's tearing our gut up. And our gut starts in our mouth and goes all the way down to where everything exits. And so we've got holes in our gut, leaky gut syndrome. We've got overpopulation of all of these pathogens that live in a dirty gut. We've got to enforce the good guys, the good bacteria in our gut. Otherwise, our immune system goes down the drain. And so the yeast, the fungus, the molds, all of the parasites come in to just destroy us and kill us. And that's what they were originally put there for by God, is when we're dying to return our body to the earth. We don't need their participation when we're trying to live. So what you've got to do is eat a food. The king of foods is going to support that gut the best is called kimchi. And it's been around for centuries, and it's got over 900 different probiotics in it, and some are very unique strains. So it can repair that gut, and it can put those good bacteria way over the bad guys. And what we did, because most Americans have a little bit of aversion to the taste and the smell of this traditional food from Korea called kimchi, this fermented food. So we were able at Brightcore to put it in a capsule so you can have the benefits of better digestion, of skin and hair show up. Skin is our largest organ. It's a defender part of our immune system. So we want to protect that. So that gets stronger. Our digestion gets stronger. Our immune system gets gets stronger. Our ability to not have brain fog and think clear is stronger because of the connection to the gut, the brain-gut connection. So we're able to put those benefits into the capsules. So you take 3 every day and you are protecting your gut. Think of it as your special ops forces.
Yeah, and someone in our chat room, Catholic Crusader, says she is 100% correct in gut flora health. Yeah, and when you're eating that with proper meat, yes, kimchi. Some people, like your mom, is not a big fan of the smell of kimchi, but she's
you're not raised with that.
She's doing the pills instead.
Yeah.
So you guys, I'll put this 800 number up here on the screen. If someone wants to call you guys and try this out, they can. You get 25% off if you use the code Redacted. You guys have been a fantastic supporter of our show. I just want to say thank you for that. Or you can call that 800 number on your screen, 888-404-6312, and you'll actually get 50% off and free shipping if you go there as well. So our thanks to Kim for that. Now, someone in the chat was asking Kim, will you get gassy? Will you get gassy with this? And I said, I have not experienced that.
Some people will.
He's not overly gassy.
Good to know. No, some people will, because when you are overpopulated with bacteria, bad bacteria, fungus, yeasts, and parasites, when they start dying off, you can get some gas and some bloat, but that's a temporary thing. Now, I would much rather go through that stage and have those critters out of my body than have them sitting there and multiplying, where it's going to make me sicker and reduce my immune system. So yeah, you know, it's not all going to be roses for some people in the beginning, but think about the other side. Think about how healthy you're going to be. So yeah, you'll have a little bit of that, but you can always take some charcoal. That helps. They've got charcoal pills, or eat burnt toast, something like that. That helps with things like that. But yeah, if you're really overpopulated, which most Americans are, you may have that. Some people don't.
All right, Kim, thank you so much for this. I am hopeful what's going to happen with RFK Jr. and this move towards getting rid of these pharmaceutical ads. But I think these major television stations are going to collapse. If they don't have, if like Fox News and MSNBC and all of them don't have billions funneling in from the pharmaceutical companies, I don't know how they survive. I mean, 70% of their revenue is coming from, well, they still have bloated financial products to sell you, like an IRA or a 401k. So that's right.
Maybe they'll charge more for that.
Yeah, they have other things there, but we'll see. But I just think that, I knew that we turned a corner the day that I watched that bullet graze President Trump's ear, and he got up and said, "Fight, fight, fight." And the hand of God is on him. And I know we turned a corner then. So that's what I believe in my heart. And I think we just have to keep going forward. And is it going to be an easy path? No, because we have a lot of opposition. Those evil people, those evil entities and people that run them, they're all about money and power. And, we're about getting people well and telling them the truth and wanting them to thrive in life. So we are at opposite ends, and we're dealing with good and evil here, basically.
Kim Bright, thank you for being a bright spot. We appreciate it as always. Great to see you. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for Redacted. I want to remind you, we have a store. If you're interested in signaling your that you watch Redacted, that you subscribe to the Redacted newsletter, go on over to redactedstore.com. A good one now that we've got this communist mayor who's been leading in the polls in New York City is, what is it? Communism equals starvation. Yes, that sweatshirt. Wear that around New York City, because
your new communist leader in New York City. You have a new
communist leader, and tell people to prepare for starvation. This is not a race I've been following acutely, but it's interesting. So if you feel like you want to wear that in public, please do. Check out our other things as well. You can find it at redactedstore.com. Once again, if you'd like to get mugs or stickers or what have you, redactedstore.com. All right, we will be back tomorrow, everybody. Same time, same place. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you being here. See you then.
Bye, everyone.